Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. I have my tea here. Just made some tea, huh? Got myself a kettle. Yes, should I say myself? And welcome. We're going to talk about neuromyths today. I know it's pretty early in Brazil. So if you are joining from Brazil, thank you very much for being up. You're probably just up having breakfast and preparing your lessons or doing whatever you do. So I'm pretty sure you're not up just for this, but if you are, thank you very much. And as I said, we're going to talk about neuromyths, but the thing is, there are a lot of neuromyths, so I had to compromise a little. I had to select a couple because I was doing some research in Tracy Tokuhama's book, so this is a great book. If you haven't seen it before, I think I've shown it a couple of times. Making Classrooms Better. And it has 50 practical applications based on the MBE science, right? So this is awesome. And then if you go to the page 12 and 13 and 14, about neuromyths. So you have basically 2 pages of neuromyths, and I counted them. So there are basically 53 neuromyths that she discusses in her book. Yes, and they are all about, they're about everything, about intelligence, about brain architecture, about teaching and learning, about development and environment, brain activity, brain plasticity, memory, mind-brain connection, emotions and learning, bilingualism, gender and race, nutrition, brain learning dynamic, commercial ventures. So there are a lot of neuromyths. So I welcome Wesley. Who else? Teacher Ale Lima, Teacher Elida. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having your breakfast, or maybe you've already had your breakfast, right? And anyway, I have my cute cat mug that my wife gave to me. So thank you, honey. And I'm drinking some mint tea today. And it's hot. Ooh. So anyway, first of all, what are neuromyths? Have you ever seen? I'm pretty sure you have if you work with education. But what is the meaning, or what is the best definition for a neuromyth? Well, if you want to type something in there, if you want to make a comment while I get my tea a little, cooler. What is a neuromyth? What is your explanation or your description or definition for neuromyth? 7 a.m. in Brazil, getting ready to go to work, Wesley. Very nice, yeah. That's what I figured. That's what I imagined when I was proposing this, because, the time difference is really hard. I'm 4 hours ahead of you guys there in Brazil. So, I think this is a good time for you because maybe you're getting ready to go to work and then maybe you can spare a couple of minutes to watch, right? Anyway, so what are neuromyths? No clue? I'll give you a very simple definition. A neuromyth is a claim about the brain and how it works and how it develops, anything about the brain that is actually false, that has no evidence, or that brain research does not assumptions exactly. Yes, so there are assumptions about the brain, about how it works, that are not really true based on brain research, based on neuroscience and cognitive psychology, for example. I think Patricia McKay has joined us. Hello, Patricia. Good to have you here with us. So the thing is, are those claims, are those neuromyths any dangerous? Can they do harm especially when we are teaching? Yes, they can, a lot of harm, but most of them, honestly, they don't really change the way we teach, and that's my struggle here in Bristol. This is what I'm writing my dissertation about. A lot of the research out there testing if not only teachers, but the general public, if they know about the neuromyths, if they know which neuromyths are out there, if they know how the brain works. A lot of the research has focused on things that, quite honestly, I don't see the application, the real application in the classroom. I'll give you a couple of examples, okay? So one neuromyth is that we only use 10% of our brains, and I wrote a blog post about this. So this is a neuromyth, definitely. We use different percentages, the whole brain actually. There are some areas that we use more than others depending on what we're doing, but we definitely do not just use 10% of our brains. Okay, great, you know that now. So how does that translate into something useful in the classroom? You see? Okay, so if you do know that, if you don't know that, how is that going to impact what you do in terms of classroom strategies, right? So this is one example. Another example might be, I don't know, that kids, they get too hyper when they eat sugary things or drink sugary drinks. Yeah, the neuroscience doesn't show that, so it's a myth as well. How would that impact what you do in the classroom? Would you, because you don't really give kids sweets in the classroom, sometimes you do as a reward maybe. Maybe you would not give them sugary things because that would make them hyper and that would be bad for the lesson. So, some of those neuromyths are not really stuff that we can use in the classroom. So that's why out of the 53 neuromyths that I got from Tracy Tokuhama's book, based on a lot of research, including Susana Herculano, a Brazilian scientist, neuroscientist, my great professor Paul Howard Jones and Decker. They published an article in 2012 and many others. Hatu, and I forgot the name of his co-author. They replicated that in Portugal. My professor did it in Turkey, Greece, and China as well. So, it's being replicated all over. So I'm getting some of the neuromyths that they really have something to do with what we do in the classroom, okay? They are very important for us to know. And let's start from number one classic neuromyth. And I wrote a couple of down here, a couple of them. So the first one is learning styles. Yes. So, I need to drink a little more tea before I start talking about learning styles. So a lot of teachers, a lot of English teachers believe in the learning styles neuromyth for a very, specific reason, I'd say, because of Cambridge, basically, and because of our teaching training programs, I suppose. And I'm not saying that Cambridge is terrible. I'm saying that they've been replicating that in their CELTA and Delta courses. So if you've taken the CELTA and Delta, you've definitely heard about this neuromyth, the learning styles neuromyth. And I'm not so sure it's doing so much harm, to be honest. So let me explain where it came from. So in the 1960s, before that, so it's older than that, but especially in the 1960s, a couple of authors started labeling and classifying students into 3, 4, even more, maybe 5 different boxes, right? Because of the way that they preferred to learn. So if I want to receive more visual information, visual input, I'm a visual learner. If I want to listen to something more, I'm an auditory learner. If I prefer to act things, to enact, I'm a kinesthetic learner, right? And then there's the reading learner, the olfactory. So you have a lot of different types. But the most famous frameworks are by Walter Burke Barb, the VAK, the VAK, right? And I think it was also reproduced by... I'm trying to remember this guy's. I think it was Neil Fleming, right? Neil Fleming, yes. So, and then he included the social type of learner and the physical type of learner, but he kept the visual and auditory, right? In a way, that was good for us teachers, because then we started catering for those specific needs, I think. Then we started really asking ourselves and reflecting, okay, if I have different types of learners in the classroom, I have to present information in different ways, right? If I have a lot of visual learners in the classroom, I need to have something visual. I need to have something like a picture, an image, or I need to get them to write things down so that they can make a visual representation of that, and then they will learn better. If I have a lot of auditory learners in the classroom, I have to give them a lot of phonological input, sound input, right? Because they process information better in that way. If I have kinesthetic learners, I have to do something more active and get them to move and, you know, perform something maybe. So in a way, that's good. I mean, that's actually very good for learning. Because then you are doing other things that neuroscience has shown to work well. And one of those things are dual coding, for example. We know that from the works of Alan Badley, for example, that we have two different channels in our brains, in our memory system, our working memory system, which is the phonological loop and the visual spatial sketchpad. So phonological has to do with sounds. Hello, teacher Fernanda, Annelise, and Deborah have joined us. Welcome, welcome. And so anyway, so if we have two channels in our working memory system and we use our working memory to learn new stuff, and one is phonological, that works with sounds, that processes sounds. The other one is visual spatial, so it's all about visual images, and spatial is about moving, is about, you know, space, right? So yes, it makes sense to present information using those channels. So present information phonologically and visually and spatially, because then we are encoding that in a better, more effective way. So great. The problem is, and this is how I see it anyway, is that if you are in a situation in which your students are not, you know, if you have a group of students that for some reason everyone tested auditory, everyone is an auditory learner. I know this is virtually impossible, right, using those internet tests. But anyway, let's say, or you're working with a very small group, or maybe you're just working one-on-one, for example, face-to-face, one-to-one classes, things like that. And then that specific learner is auditory. And then you say, you know, because of this theory, I don't really need to do anything kinesthetic or anything visual. So that's where the problem lies, I think. If you do that, you are missing on, you know, the opportunity of encoding the information dually using the two channels of our working memory, right? And then the science shows that that information is not going to be learned more effectively. In fact, in 2008, there was a big study by Psychology Today, or maybe it was the American Psychological Association, showing that visual learners do not learn best if they are presented with visual information. Auditory learners do not learn best if they are presented with phonological, oral information, and so on. So just because you think you learn best, you know, this is your style because you've been tested and you really like to take notes, and, you know, I think I'm visual because of this and that, it doesn't mean you're going to learn best if you are presented only with visual information. So that's, you know, and the research is pretty consistent and has a lot of evidence so far. And that's the good thing. That's how, hello, Teacher Pavini, Teacher Fernanda, welcome, welcome. Anyway, got it? So that means that learning styles, yes, they are a neuromyth. You can use them to prepare your lessons. You can assume that everyone has all the styles, because then you're going to present the same information in different ways. And that's what's good. Diversification, you know. Trying to present the same thing in different ways, then you have better representations of that in your brain, and that works well. Okay, so learning styles, Myth debunked, all right? Hopefully. Yes. Now, number two. Oh, number two is one of my favorite neuromyths. Fixed intelligence. So, a long time ago, more than a century ago, two people. Oh yes, Teacher Fernanda does that. You present in different ways, Teacher Fernanda. Is that what you were saying? Yeah? That's good. I mean, yes. Uh, and I'm drinking my mint tea from my cat mug. How cute is that, huh? Oh, by the way, for those who came only to check on Mr. Trunk, is right here. He's always here listening to us, learning. He knows more about neuroscience than I do, I think. Anyway, so fixed intelligence. Oh, fixed intelligence. Again, a long time ago, two guys wrote a book. I think they actually won a prize for it. Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon. They were the inventors of the Binet-Simon test, the IQ test, right? And then it was a scale, and it gave us a score of how intelligent we were. So I'm pretty sure some of you have done an IQ test, maybe. Maybe you did it when you were kids, or I don't know, maybe you have, I don't know, looked at some of your students' IQ tests. I know I never have. I remember I never actually took an IQ test officially. I don't know how many points, on the scale I have. But I've done bits of IQ tests, those logical sort of puzzles that you have to guess which one comes, next in the sequence and things like that. So the neuromyth revolves around this thing of people have a certain amount of intelligence or fixed intelligence, which is completely not true at all. So and we still do a lot of things believing that. I think we still design a lot of educational experiences around that, using that as a foundation. We do think that some of our students will only get so far because they are not, they were not cut out for it. They're not, how can I say, they have a different sort of intelligence or something like that. So they're not really ready for that. So a lot of the evidence that we have now shows that no, students can and many times will develop more intelligence. We can make new connections. Our brains are very plastic. We never really stop making connections. Even when we're very old, we have new synapses, the little gaps between the neurons where exchange of information happens, right? So we know that. And I think the best author who has been discussing this for a long time, I love her research, Carol Dweck. So I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the concepts of fixed and growth mindset. So a fixed mindset sort of person is the one who believes that they cannot improve their intelligence. They think that they actually were born, so it's an inborn trait. They were born with a certain limit or intelligence capacity that they cannot just overcome that. That's it. And then there are certain things that they can learn. There are certain things that they cannot learn. Again, it's not an absolute divide. We have that I have a fixed mindset for many things, and I think the trick is knowing that it is a fixed mindset, and then knowing that it prevents me from doing certain things, right? Or you can have a more growth mindset, which is basically knowing that with effort, dedication, practice, feedback, you can improve your intelligence, you can increase your intelligence. And I think one of the coolest researches, papers out there was the one that Carol Dweck did with math kids, and then she presented that on her TED Talk, and then she followed those kids throughout the whole year, And then she realized, so she applied a questionnaire at the beginning, and she realized that those with a more growth mindset would learn better, they would perform better, long term. And those who had a more fixed mindset, they would avoid new challenges because they wanted to feel good about themselves. So, they got A's, and if there was anything a little bit more challenging, they would probably refuse and not want to do it because they didn't want to lose their status in the class. I'm the best, so. And those who have a more growth mindset, they like challenges. They actually want challenges, And so our intelligence is not fixed. We can work on our intelligence. We can become more intelligent. And Alfred Binet, the guy, one of the co-authors of this whole IQ theory, he said that in the book. And he said that we should never be so deterministic as to, get this score, this 100 and whatever points that you have, that means that, that represents your intelligence, and say, oh, this kid is going to be that because of that number. So it is very deterministic. We should never do that. We shouldn't label. Simon, on the other hand, he was more like, yeah, we should do that. So I think they had a conflict there. But so that's only to show us that we can be as intelligent as, so the sky is the limit. We just have to put in the effort, get feedback. Teacher Fernanda said feedback is really important. Yes, that's why whenever I'm teaching a course or presenting something, I really like to talk to people after, so that they can say, I really liked this and this, and I'm really looking for the things they didn't like, because that's very important for me to make things better the next time. And we are not aware of every aspect of the things that we can do. And then when we get someone to look at them and tell us, maybe you should improve here, that's precious, We should be more, I would say, open to feedback. I think we are not, as a culture. I don't think we like to be judged by people. We should, That's how we make improvements anyway. So no fixed intelligence, okay? Neuromyth debunked, all right? Now, number 3. That's controversial. More tea for me. Ever heard, especially if you're in Brazil, ever heard anyone saying that, music, art, we should get rid of those things and put, and add more physics lessons or maths and things like that, because those things are going to get, to get kids to get a good job in the future and things like that, right? So I got forget arts. That's one of the myths, the neuromyths. Don't forget arts. For God's sake, don't forget arts. So there has been a shift. So there was a shift a couple of years ago from this thing. So they created this area, this very interesting acronym that brought together some areas, some disciplines, or better subjects that we studied that they called STEM. STEM. Anybody heard of that? STEM. So that was science, technology, engineering, and math, right? So that's what we need. Yeah, please debunk this. Yes, so STEM, think about that. So Deborah knows what she's talking about. She's worked with music, right? So listen to Deborah, everyone. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. And what a lot of countries, especially, I think it started in the United States, to be honest, what a lot of countries started prioritizing in their curricula was, that's what brings money. That's what we, if you think about the professions that generate added value, for our economy, it's science, technology, engineering, and math, because we build machines and programs and software and things like that, right? Yes and no. I mean, so this is a huge myth. So now there's a movement that is, bringing the A back to STEM. So it's not STEM, it's STEAM now. So it's not just science, technology, engineering, but arts also, and math, okay? Because we know from research, a lot of studies show that, okay, if you want to increase your intelligence, you need to make your brain, you need to explore your brain's plasticity, right? And a very good way for you to do that, to use, higher order thinking skills, to tap into creativity, is actually by doing arts, music, yes, painting, drawing, everything. And we know that kids who do those things, they will probably, most certainly, have better performance than kids who do not do those things, I think it's a tragedy what is happening in some countries, especially our own country, Brazil, that they want to get rid of arts, I know that they don't have, I studied in a public school. My whole elementary education was in a public school, and I didn't have music classes. That was such a pity, because I had to go. Thank God I actually had this opportunity. I had to find an institution, a center that actually offered music classes, and it was for free. So Brasital, if anybody is from Brasital listening to me, Núcleo de Música, Tom Jobim, and then there was the Projeto Guri. And thank you so much for everything that I learned from you, because it made me a better person. It definitely made me more intelligent, because I studied. So you develop other areas of your brain. So you will see a lot of studies linking higher intelligence with musical intelligence. I don't want to use Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences theory, because according to Tracy Tokuhama, it might be a myth as well. And I think Howard Gardner has mentioned a couple of times in the I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, that people got the idea wrong. Anyway, but we know that musical training is excellent for your brain. It develops, it boosts even mathematical skills, reasoning skills, okay? So learn music. If you think your kids are struggling with math, don't give them more math classes. Give them a trumpet, give them a guitar. That's how I learned. I was really good at math. And I now, looking back, I think there is a very strong connection with the fact that I studied music, yeah. And not just music, really. I think we should have we should have a better sports program in our schools. We should have, drama, arts, architecture, design, things like that. And they should get the same attention, the same focus that we give to other subjects. So one of the TED Talks that really changed my life and made me want to transform education was Sir Ken Robinson's, the early one. So I think it's probably 10 years old now. And till this day, if I'm not mistaken, the most viewed TED Talk. And the title was, still is, because you can still watch it, Do Schools Kill Creativity? And then he said that there was a girl struggling in the 60s to sit still in the classroom. And then they brought in psychologists and her parents. They left the girl in a room with the radio on. And then, so there some song was playing, and the girl was just dancing. And then one of the psychologists or the director or coordinator, don't remember exactly, said, "There's nothing wrong with your girl. I mean, she cannot pay attention, because our classrooms are very much kind of rigid, static. But look at her, she's a dancer." And then she went on to become one of the most famous ballerinas of all time. She became a millionaire. What is wrong with us encouraging? Why don't we want to encourage our kids to become artists? If when we are stressed out, when we are, burning out almost, we want to listen to music. We want to watch a movie. We want to, go to an exhibition. Yes, we look at beautiful photography when we get stressed out. But for some reason, we think those are inferior professions. That's really wrong. I think we would benefit a lot if we changed the curriculum in Brazil today, if we gave more focus, if we really emphasized the arts, and we would gain, cognitively, we would gain a lot as well. That's what the research says anyway. So forget arts, debunked, myth debunked, okay? Don't forget arts, include arts. Okay, number 4. So this is Neuromyth number 4. Drill and kill. Well, when you phrase it like that, it doesn't sound so much like a neuromyth. Drill and kill. So what do you think about drilling, about repeating, repetition? So maybe if you, okay. Oh, Deborah, thank you very much. If you want to know more about music and the brain, go for Daniel Levitin, right? I hope that's how you pronounce his last name, Levitt. I haven't heard about him, so thank you very much. Yes. Anything about drilling and killing? Do you think drilling is important? Yes, drilling is very important. A lot of schools, they base their whole method around the notion of drilling, neurolinguistics. I know because I've worked for a couple, and it is effective, I'd say, yeah, but not as effective as what the science shows. So, drilling is a very important part of your lesson, but I don't think it should be done to exhaustion, because we know for a fact, and since the 1900s, actually, this comes from Hermann Ebbinghaus's research that he did on himself. We know that it's much better if we not only not drill the same thing for a very long time, but also if we drill the thing that we want to learn in a more spaced out way. So instead of, let's imagine you're trying to learn a specific structure in English. You're going to repeat this structure for 1 hour in the class. That's exhausting. It might work, but it's not effective. I mean, it's not really, if you look at long-term retention, okay, maybe if it's not something too complex, maybe you will have consolidated it for some time. But you are just wasting cognitive resources. It is better, according to the research, if we do 2 things, actually. The first thing is interleaved practice. So the works of Dr. Robert Bjork, instead of focusing too much for a very long time on just one thing and repeating, drilling for a very long time, it's actually more interesting if you interleave with something else. So I have A and B to learn. So I'll do some A, and then B. B, A, B. I can even include a C and a D as long as I interleave, right? So there's a cycle there. The second thing that we know, let me drink some more tea, is that we don't want to waste all the drilling in just one lesson. We want to save it for the next lesson, hopefully for 3 lessons ahead, and maybe even more, and then before the test or something like that. This is called spacing effect, spaced repetition. And again, Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered that in the late 1900s when he got a deck of cards. He wrote some 3-letter syllables on them, and he tested his memory. And I don't remember the numbers exactly. I'm talking about memory, but my memory is not that great. But if you need to memorize a deck of, I don't know, maybe 15 cards or 15 syllables on one day, so you need to memorize them and learn for a very long time. And remember for a year or so, because he would go back and check a year after. You need something like 67 repetitions on the same day. But if you space that out, if you repeat a couple of times today and then tomorrow and then a couple of days after, he found that 7 repetitions were enough for you to have the same effect 1 year after. So what we are doing, so drilling and killing is killing our lessons, because then if you drill too much one particular structure, you make the lesson very, very tedious and exhausting and boring. I'm not saying that all the lessons should be fun, but if they're just boring all the time, then learning is not happening very effectively. So remember, interleaved practice, Robert Bjork, and spaced repetition or spacing effect. And there are a lot of people, a lot of cognitive psychologists who have researched and written articles about that. So John Domlowski and Bjork, and you can look at Brown and Rodiger. They have a book called Making It Stick, I think. And there is another guy who Karpiki, yes. He talks about active retrieval and spaced repetition. So those are very good strategies to use in the classroom, okay? And what time is it? I mean, we're still going. Yeah, I still have 2 more, okay? So if you can watch this later. I'm going to upload this to IGTV as well, so don't worry if you have to go to work now, if you have to go to the bathroom, okay? So you are probably doing this right now. Neuromyth. Oh, so Neuromyth 4, drill and kill, debunked, hopefully. Neuromyth 5. So you're probably doing this right now. This is multitasking. Oh, multitasking. So how many of you multitask? Think about it. And what is multitasking? When I was doing some research, this comes from computer science, information technology. It's something that computers should be able to do. Well, we are not computers, and research goes against this idea of multitasking. But multitasking is basically doing 2 tasks at the same time. How did you know I was multitasking? Well, I know that's what we do then, but we're always multitasking, right? Because of necessity. So there are things that, there are probably a million reasons why we should multitask, especially when we're doing, trivial sort of physical things or daily routine things. I think it's okay for you to... Oh yes, Wesley, the last one, affection in learning. I promise this is the next neuromyth, okay? I'm gonna talk about that. So yes, multitasking, like, I'm driving the car and maybe I'm listening to the news. That's okay. Driving the car and talking to someone on the phone, that might be dangerous. If you're talking, if you don't have to do anything physical, other than just listen and answer, that's not too dangerous. But driving and texting, that's very dangerous, because then you're using the same working memory channel overload, visual spatial sketchpad, right? That's very dangerous. But so yeah, like I don't know, preparing breakfast and looking at your to-do list for the day, those are multitasking. There are tasks that we need multitasking for. That's okay. But for learning, trying to learn while you are doing something else, learning should be a little difficult. Robert Bjork calls it desirable difficulty. And we don't really multitask. We cannot do 2 things at the same time effectively. What we do is switch task. And switch task is, you spend a second here, a second there, a second here, a second there. If anything happened during the second that you were away, you missed it, because you cannot, it's impossible, So multitasking is bad. And I wrote here, there's a research by Joanne Deek, D-E-A-K, showing that multitasking reduces productivity and quality of your work, and there's a long-term danger involved because kids are multitasking all the time. when they are not multitasking, because they get this rush, this dopamine release in their brain, in their reward system, when they're multitasking, going crazy like that. If they don't have that, everything else becomes boring. And that's bad, because we need them to be focused on one thing to do it more effectively, to do it better. So how do we fight that? Because nowadays it's all about multitasking. It's very hard. Do you have any suggestions? I'm out of tea now. So again, multitasking, bad for you. Don't do it. If you're going to learn something, and again, do not confuse that with interleaving. Multitasking is kind of like, you're doing an online course and at the same time you're answering your emails. Because your mind goes off, it just goes, you cannot focus. That's bad. Interleaving is more like you are doing two courses, or maybe you're doing an online course and you have a specific task and then you have another one. So maybe you can do a little bit of the first one and then a little bit of the second one. That's not multitasking, because you're inside the course, still within the course, but you're answering your email, or maybe you're talking to your mom on the phone and you're cooking. Maybe things will go wrong. Again, they are simple sort of physical tasks. Okay, they don't really demand a lot of higher order thinking skills, right? A lot of activity in the frontal lobe, for example. So that's okay. But for learning in the classroom, and here I'm talking specifically about learning, multitasking is bad, okay? So, neuromyth debunked. Yes. And maybe one example. If you are reading, I think the best example is reading something out loud in the classroom. When we ask kids to read something, so sometimes even stand up, I don't know if you still do anything like that, they're doing two things. That you are expecting them to do two things at the same time, which is read and pay attention to what they're reading and learn, and also focus on their pronunciation to make sure that they're not saying anything wrong. They are not doing anything right, It's better if you give them some time to read. If you want them to read a passage out loud, we don't really need to do stuff like that any longer, but to ask someone to read, and they're focusing much more on the way they sound, because they don't want to sound stupid in the class, so they're not really getting anything from the text. So this is an example of multitasking that doesn't work in the classroom, okay? And, oh yes, Deborah, an idea for kids to multitask while learning. They can move yes, because again, have those fidget spinners, yeah, something like that. Yeah, so this is an interesting, so this is multitasking that involves a physical thing, like a visual, spatial, and then more higher order thinking kind of thing. So kids, if they're sitting still, they don't learn as well as if they're moving around and doing the things that kids like to do. And to be honest, running around, moving and jumping, that doesn't require a lot of thinking. So it's okay. It's definitely okay to do that. So this is not the multitasking that I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you have two highly or demanding cognitive tasks, let's say, and then that's what we do, like answering an email and checking our Facebook and then engaging. So this kind of thing is bad for learning. We need to focus on one, finish whatever you have to do, and then start the other, okay? But moving around, jumping, that's great actually. That's we've seen, if you force kids to be still in the class, we know that doesn't work very well. And then the final, so I hope multitasking debunked, right? And emotions, the final one, and affection, like Wesley has mentioned there. Okay, so another thing that is going on in our country and a lot of other countries in the world is that we don't care about students' emotions. We just have to make them work their academic muscle. That's what we want them to do. We don't, if they're feeling down or depressed, or, well, I don't want to use the word depressed because that's a serious thing. But if they're feeling down, if they're in a bad mood, I don't care. We don't care. I want them to learn something. Well, that's the thing. They can't, according to the research. If for some reason they are not motivated because of something happened to them, we're not really taking their emotions into consideration, they are not going to learn. And Wesley wanted me to recommend something related to the role of affection in learning. I actually have the book here, so I think, just a second, Wesley. I think this is the book. Yep. This is Antonio Damasio's Descartes' Error. I went to Portugal to film my online course about this guy. And he wrote this book is excellent, and he wrote an article with Dr. Imordino Yang that the title is great. We feel, therefore we learn. So learning has everything to do with affection and emotions, and because first of all, we need dopamine to pay attention. Our reward system, not just dopamine. Dopamine is one of the neuromodulators. Norepinephrine, serotonin. We have some other stuff there. If we don't produce that because we are not feeling okay, there you go. You're not really paying attention. You're not really engaged. If you're not really engaged, there is no transferring from the sensory memory to the short-term memory to the long-term memory. So there's no consolidation. So the whole thing falls apart, right? And I think this tells us something very important about how we treat our students in the classroom. And for those who have studied TESOL or ELT and things like that, or letras, languages, and you've probably heard of Stephen Krashen's affective filter. We have to bring the wall down so that we can reach our students, and that is very true. So if you look at this neuromyth, I think it tells us that we need to take our students' emotions into consideration when we are teaching. We need to make sure that they're feeling safe, that we create this environment that they can make mistakes, they can be who they are, they can show us their interests, they can feel like, I don't like this. They can feel like they can say those things, but then you can sort of, ask them, why don't you like this, and try to get them more interested, and, or just let them know, yeah, even though you don't like this is very important. And, sometimes we have to learn things that we don't like. Many times we have to learn things that we don't like. And because if we just ignore their emotions, if we treat them in a very harsh way, I think there might be terrible consequences. We've seen everywhere from basically every level of education that cases of depression and suicide are on the rise, like in a very scary way, I must say, especially post-graduation students, right? Because they are not taught how to deal with their emotions. Daniel Goleman has talked a lot. He's the father of the emotional intelligence, right? And I believe that it makes a lot of sense for us to try to teach our kids how to be themselves and to explore who they are and to engage with their peers and to be comfortable with us, and then we can make learning much more effective. I think that's not just effective with AE, but also effective with E, Yeah, I think Americans and British people, they pronounce it basically the same way, the schwa sound, right? Effective, effective, effect. Yeah, it's the same way. So with A, with E. So yes, if we do that, if we build rapport with our students, then learning will happen in a better way. Okay? So emotions out of the classroom. Myth debunked, hopefully. And I think that's it. I hope you enjoyed this session. This is part of my neuroscience and learning online course. You can sign up for it right now. You can just check my bio. I think I put the link there for you. And this is one of the sessions. Actually, it's not just one of the sessions. It's throughout the whole thing. So in session 1, I talk about neuroscience and learning, neuroanatomy, and I mention a couple of those things. And then in session 2, I talk about motivation. I talk about memory and things like that. So the neuromyths are all around, okay? Also, Mirella Hamaciotti, everyone. If you are in Brazil, so Mirella Hamaciotti is my mentor, and she's awesome. I know that she's offering a Neuromyths course with Vinicius Diamantino. I think it's Neuromyths. I don't remember the name of the course, so you look that up. And thank you, teacher Ale Lima. She loves my sessions. Thank you very much. That makes me feel very happy. Helps and motivates me a lot. That's why I do them, So so Mirella Hamaciotti, everyone. She is the big reference of MBE in Brazil. I'm very lucky that I met Mirella, because I have no doubt that I've been able to see what I want to do in life because of her, because of the session, because of the course that I did with her 2 years ago. And she's really a wonderful, amazing teacher. I think the best teacher, one of the best that I ever had, to be honest. And she has a course that she's offering with De Prof para Prof, I think, with Vinicius Diamantino about neuromyths. So you can do that course as well, or you can do my course, and I'm pretty sure you can find some other courses and books and articles, sessions like this, live sessions and YouTube videos and you name it. There's a bunch now. And yes, Deborah says she will offer again another one, São Paulo Open Center. Yes, that's where I did the course with her, São Paulo Open Center. But the Neuromyth course that she's offering is online, probably. I don't know if maybe there's a face-to-face version of this course as well. Anyway, so that's it. If you want to know more, if you want to ask me anything, make comments, give me feedback, whatever you want, you know where to find me. You can also check my blog. I write about stuff like that. Maybe just let me know what you think. I'll ask you a question right now. Should I write a blog post about those neuromyths? Maybe kind of explain the origin and why it's they're considered neuromyths. So if you want, I can do that too. Because you know what? This is actually part of my dissertation. So it helps me study a little. All right? So, yes, thank you very much, Deborah. Yes, I'm glad to know that as well. I know you've become our stalker. And 2 more things. Chá Pedagógico, Pedagogical Tea, is happening on Sunday at 6 p.m. Brazilian time. Rodolfo Machello, myself. And this time we're going to do it in English because I think we're going to have an international audience. And we'll be talking about native speakerism. Yes, that's pretty cool because of, recent events, let's say. I went to the Barcelona Innovate ALT conference, which was amazing. And I've been doing some research, and then we're going to talk about native speakerism. And we are offering a bilingualism course, a course on bilingualism from, I think our perspective is kind of unique. We would like to think that way anyway, that I'm talking about bilingualism from a neuroscience perspective, and Rodolfo from a linguistics perspective. And I think we put together very, very cool stuff for anyone. So just check Rodolfo. Actually, you can check Macielo Consultoria on Facebook, on Instagram. You can actually go to his website and then you'll find more information about our course. We're still uploading a couple of things because it's going to take place in July, but you can enroll right now. So thank you very much. Have a lovely day. Eat your carbs in the morning and get some coffee. And that's it. See you, everyone. Time for lunch for me here now. Bye-bye. Thank you very much for following. Okay, yes, please. Yeah, okay, I'll write a blog post about it, okay? All right.